Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Now it's my honor to introduce our speaker today. Mushim Ikeda is a meditation teacher and a community peace activist, writer, diversity facilitator, and the mother of a 26-year-old son. She's done both monastic and lay Zen Buddhist practice over the past 30 years in the U.S., Canada, Mexico, and South Korea. Her poetry, fiction, and essays have been published widely in journals and anthologies such as Tricycle and Innovative Buddhist Women, Swimming Against the Stream. Mushim was co-editor of Making the Invisible Visible, Healing Racism in Our Buddhist Communities. Her work has been featured in 2 documentary films, Between the Lines, Asian American Women Poets, and Acting on Faith, Women and the New Religious Activism in America. Mushim is a core teacher at the East Bay Meditation Center in downtown Oakland. And so, give it to Mushim.
Thank you very much, Risha. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for inviting me here. Very foggy, driving over the bridge from Oakland. It's really beautiful, actually. So this talk is titled The Bodhisattva Vow, Poking Our Heads Up from the Sea of Samsara. We can poke our heads up. Some of you may be familiar with this text. As I look around the meditation hall here, I see all of the Tibetan Buddhist tankas, so this is very fitting that this is from Shantideva's famous text, A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. Shantideva was active in the 8th century in what is now modern-day India. Chapter 3, Full Acceptance of the Awakening Mind. I'll just read a little bit from it. Gladly do I rejoice in the virtue that relieves the misery of all those in unfortunate states and that gives happiness to the suffering. I rejoice in that gathering of virtue that is the cause for the Arhat's awakening. I rejoice in the definite freedom of embodied creatures from the miseries of cyclic existence. I rejoice in the awakening of the Buddhas and also in the spiritual levels of their children. And with gladness I rejoice in the ocean of virtue for developing an awakening mind that wishes all beings to be happy, as well as in the deeds that bring them benefit. With folded hands I beseech the Buddhas of all directions to shine the lamp of Dharma for all bewildered in misery's gloom. With folded hands I beseech the conquerors who wish to pass away to please remain for countless eons and not to leave the world in darkness. Thus, by the virtue collected through all that I have done, may the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor, the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. May a rain of food and drink descend to clear away the pain of thirst and hunger, and during the eon of famine, may I myself change into food and drink. May I become an inexhaustible treasure for those who are poor and destitute. May I turn into all things they could need and be placed close beside them. That's verses 1 through 10 of chapter 3, Full Acceptance of the Awakening Mind. translated in this case by Stephen Batchelor. So fast forwarding from 8th century India to right now, here's a recent quote that appeared on Facebook by George Takei from an article, Being Gay, Being Buddhist, that was published in the Shambhala Sun's online site, their Lion's Roar. And he says, we can all bring about change. We can bring about greater equality for all. That, I feel, is part of the mission of Buddhism. So that's George Takei. And in fact, I have a limited edition book that was put out by the Imamura family about the history of the Berkeley Buddhist Temple, which is a Jodo Shinshu, or Buddhist Churches of America Pure Land temple, part of the Buddhist Churches of America network in Berkeley. Wonderful minister there now, David Matsumoto. And part of their history is that George Takei, when he was a young man, was a member of this temple. And he was acting even then. And there's a photograph of him on a skit night, acting in one of their skits, looking pretty much the same.
Was it the same role?
That I don't know. Space, the final frontier. So this is called A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And I'm curious how many of you have heard of the path of the Bodhisattva and of Bodhisattva vows just in general. How many of you have heard of the path of the Bodhisattva? Okay, a lot of you. And how many of you have received Bodhisattva vows, have taken Bodhisattva precepts? I see one hand, two hands. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. So for all of us, whether we've taken these vows or not, they're, as you can hear, they're very socially engaged vows. They're very active vows. My Buddhist name is Mushim, and I received that in 1983 in Zen Buddhist Temple, Toronto. So I came from the Zen or sect part of the northern schools of Buddhism, where the Bodhisattva ideal is the ideal of practice. It is the aim of our practice. It's the heart of our practice. And these are the same vows, Bodhisattva vows taken by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, as well as millions and millions of other practitioners. So for all of us, whether we've taken these vows, which are very socially engaged vows, or whether we are simply, because we are good-hearted human beings, naturally inclined to be interested in others and to care for them, it might be helpful from time to time, and I think really even as often as possible, to reflect upon what in Buddhism is regarded as the special opportunity of being born in a human body. So, of course, many of us, myself included, are scientific people. That's part of the kind of common methodology or systems of how our viewpoints in the United States and in the West today. We may also have a diversity of different spiritual frameworks, beliefs, and so forth. So I don't think we need to debate kind of what reincarnation is or whether it exists or any of that kind of stuff, to just kind of be receptive, I hope, to the Buddhist teachings about how being born in a human body and having what's called the precious human life is a very, very, it's considered to be a really rare opportunity. And which makes our very huge brains and clever hands that can all make these really amazing things, like skyscrapers and quinoa kale salad and weapons of mass destruction and Facebook and Diet Coke and smartphones and life-changing surgeries. So I was writing this, I just kind of put down some things that are part of the bazillions of things that humans can and have created. So we do have these capacities, and how did this come to be? So I heard this story from my original teacher, Korean monk, Zen monk Samu Sinim, in the deep night in retreat in the meditation hall, probably in Ann Arbor, Michigan, or maybe up in Toronto, which was our mother temple, and is also referred to in A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. So this is a traditional story that explains the rarity of being born in a human life and having all the potentials, the capacities, the intelligence, the creativity, the destructiveness, all the stuff that we are, that's quite rare. And I remember, so the night that this Dharma talk was given, or maybe it was a few words spoken during retreat, that this teacher, Samu Sinim, said, imagine that the earth was once long ago covered with a great warm ocean. There were no land masses at that time. It was all ocean, just the entire globe covered with just all ocean, all sea. And in that sea, that great ocean that covers the entire planet, there is an ancient sea turtle. And the sea turtle just swims around freely, and also it's blind. It is a blind old sea turtle. And it's just cruising around under this ocean, and I guess it just opens its mouth and can get some things to eat. And it's been doing that for just really an inconceivably long time. And on the surface of this ocean planet, there is a piece of wood that has a hole in the center of it. And, maybe it's about yay big, and it's got this hole in the center of it. And that hole is exactly big enough for that ancient sea turtle's head to pop through. That's all. It's not that big. And it, too, is floating around without will. It's a piece of wood. It's just floating around on the surface of this planet. The sea turtle dives deep under the ocean, and it only comes up for air every 100 years. It just comes up every 100 years, and it pokes its head up, takes some breaths, dives back deep down, deep down. So it's said that the chances that when the sea turtle pokes its head out of this ocean, that it's going to pop right up through that hole in the wood, the chances of your having been born in these human bodies the difficulty is even greater than the likelihood of that happening. So consider that. Consider that. Everyone in the room today, I would say without knowing all of you, but the fact that this is the Gay Buddhist Fellowship. It is 2015. I would say everyone in the room today has been on the target end of systemic oppression, structural violence, and injustice. And so that would include myself in terms of race and ethnicity, as well as my sex. And that would be because of sexual orientation and or race and ethnicity and or age, physical and cognitive disability, gender identity, and many more of what we call the dimensions of diversity. And these experiences we've had of being regarded and treated as unequal or less than can, of course, be sources of very deep wounding and trauma. And at the same time, these experiences, in my point of view as a practitioner of the Buddha Dharma, can be considered to be like deep wells that are dug into our souls, so to speak. And these wells, with the awakening and the continual cultivation of compassion, can slowly fill up as we practice and as we live in these precious human bodies, can slowly fill up with empathy, with understanding, and with the deep and abiding wish to help ourselves and others in healthy and appropriate ways. And that in doing this work of helping, this Bodhisattva work, that we can heal ourselves. We can lead happier, more fulfilling, more joyful lives. This is part of the promise of the Dharma, as you know, that simply speaking, we can grow to be more deeply happy people. So for your practice, I hope that's been true for all of you. And I can definitely say I started meditating and practicing in 1980, probably around 1981. I took the Bodhisattva vows in 1983, and I just have to say I'm just a much happier person for all the every year that goes by, which is why I keep at it. So we might think of our practice of sitting meditation like that. We're sitting, and to the extent that we can at any given time, allowing all that we are, because we each contain many identities and so much experience, including all the stories of all of our friends and families, our ancestors, our descendants. All of those elements create all of whom we are. So to the extent of allowing all we are, all that we've experienced, we can allow all of that to open us up to create these deep wells or containers that then little by little and bit by bit create space for transformation and healing. So that, as Shantideva says in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, we can then, quote, become the source of life, unquote. We can become the source of life itself. And this, for me at least, is very much the same as a practice of deep listening to others. We open ourselves, and then we empty ourselves of my, me, mine, I, for just a little while. We just can put our own story down in order to fully receive another's expression, their story, whatever it is that they have to give us. That practice of deep listening is one of the most healing forms of generous giving that we can give to another. Those of us, including myself, who have benefited by very deeply compassionate psychotherapists, various healers, members of our family who were able to listen to our sorrows and our joys, and we hope we've been able to offer that to others, know this for sure. So I think that in sitting meditation in silence, which we've just done, we are practicing this very deep and open-ended and intimate listening that might also be called deep communication. I believe that is what Katagiri Roshi, a Zen master, said that Zazen, or Zen sitting meditation, is. I read that a long time ago. He said it was deep communication. And when I was reading about Zen in 1980 or so, I thought, deep communication with what? So little did I know what interesting and pleasurable communication can be achieved with a spot of sunlight on the wall, or the beating of one's own heart, and that inner ocean, the breath. Sitting in meditation, we become Kuan Yin. And I see, I think that's Kuan Yin over there in the corner. Beautiful big one. That's Chinese. So Kanon, Kanzeon, Japanese. Kwanseon Posal, Korean. Kwanteon Botaten, Vietnamese. All the same Buddhist mythical archetypal figure who is the embodiment of compassion, and who, it is said in her form as Avalokiteshvara, hears the cries of the world. So sitting meditation, deep listening, deep communication, the cultivation of compassion, we hear the cries of the world, and thus we become the source of life. Speaking as a mother and as a source of at least one life, I know that we can ask ourselves in this very historic point in time how we're connecting, since it's just a very open-ended question of reflection, how each of us is connecting to the Black Lives Matter movement, which has really taken off, and particularly since this is the weekend in which we're celebrating the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who I think might be called one of our homegrown Bodhisattvas, our United Statesian American Bodhisattvas. This is a very auspicious time, I feel, to ask this question. To ask how we're connecting to the Black Lives Matter movement and what it is what it might have to do with our spiritual practice, our spiritual development, and our understanding of who we are. So obviously, that is not a question with one answer. It is a question with many answers as there are people in this room, and many more than that, actually. And our understanding of how we are using this precious human life. The ancient sea turtle rising from the depths and poking its head above the sea of samsara, exactly through the hole in the piece of floating wood. And as you know, today, Sunday, January 18th, 2015, on the weekend of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s national holiday, this is part of 96 hours of direct action in the Bay Area for the Black Lives Matter movement. Continuing the marches, protests, and shutdowns of freeways and federal buildings to cry out no more. To the deaths of black men and women and black transgender, queer, and disabled folks and young people and children due to police violence and systemic oppressions. As meditators, we sit down in deep communication, in deep listening, and we hear the cries of the world. And then the question becomes, when we get up from our seats, what is next? What do we do in response to all we've heard? So I want to be clear that this is a spiritual investigation and that both individual and collective reflection and action may be needed. How many of you are familiar with East Bay Meditation Center where I teach? Oh, wow. How many of you have been there? Thank you so much. The rest of you, come on over. Come on over the bridge. We're in our 8th year now. We're in downtown Oakland. So that's eastbaymeditation.org. And our first group, sitting group, regular weekly sitting group when we started out was a group for people of color, self-identified people of color. And our second group is the Alphabet Sangha, LGBTQIQSGM. And then straight white people said, what about us? So then we added our open sitting group on Friday nights. And after that, a sitting group for people with disability, chronic illness, chronic pain, and limitations of any sort who want to find support and refuge in that particular sangha. We have yoga, we've had Qigong, that we've had that in the past, and we're going to bring it back. And we also have classes and retreats, and all of it is based on the understanding that we are a diverse society. Oakland is one of the most diverse cities in the United States, and that we would like our meditation center to reflect the diversity of Oakland for its vitality, its vibrancy, and all we can learn from one another as a multicultural society based on the premise that the Dharma and social justice are very intimately entwined. Just as George Takei said, that the mission of Buddhism can be seen as being that which addresses justice and equality in our society. So those are part of the principles, the founding principles of East Bay Meditation Center, and why I've been so happy to be a part of building that center in that Sangha for 8 years. So we sit down and then we stand up, or we go about our business. We gather for fellowship, which is wonderful, to feel that spirit in this room, and then we each go forth to our daily lives, the pressures, the challenges, all of the tasks we need to do, and hopefully in our hearts we still hear the cries of the world with that open and compassionate space. And that's different from hearing the cries of the world from a place of constriction or fear or overwhelm. That happens to me every time if I open up my computer and I just look at all the headlines. I mean, there's just very horrifying and horrible things going on in the world. And I need to remind myself as a practitioner of what Thich Nhat Hanh says, which was, he has said, and certainly being a Vietnamese monk and teacher with all of the history that has involved, I think he's got his credentials in order for me when he says suffering is not enough. Suffering is not enough. So when I become weighed down upon hearing the cries of the world and my heart is just deeply wounded, then I remind myself suffering is not enough, and I find those sources of joy and happiness, which I'm so fortunate to have. I have a son whom I at least think is wonderful. He's 26, and I once said to him, "You're really not a normal person. Like, why, like most young people, myself included, younger than that," I said, it's kind of normal to be experimenting with alcohol and drugs and all of these things. And I said, not that I wish for that particularly as your parent, but you just seem to not be interested. And he said, "That's not me." And I said, "Why is that?" And he thought about it, and he said, "Probably the precepts." So I said, yes. Done my job. Okay, and so many sources of happiness and joy in my life, and we can bring those to mind to keep us buoyant and to keep us in the continual flow of the cultivation of goodness, of the Bodhisattva qualities, if we wish to look at it that way, and of considering how it is that we're connected to this very vital movement that is going on actually worldwide right now under the hashtag Black Lives Matter title, and going out on the social media and throughout the world via the worldwide net. So from Ferguson to Staten Island to France and Nigeria to every part of the world that is calling out to us. And to Dr. King, born on January 15th in 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, and assassinated on April 4th, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. We hear the many voices. We reflect on the opportunity of being born in a human body, and each in our own way, through our thoughts, our words, and our deeds, we can answer. Let us recommit today, if we wish to do so, to the awakening that the Buddha Shakyamuni taught us is possible, and recommit to profound freedom and joyful liberation. So I thank you very much for your kind attention. And I think we probably have about 10 or 15 minutes for any insights or questions that you may have. And I'm particularly interested in your insights, how, whether what I've said connects to you in any way, and if so, how it connects to your spiritual life.
Thank you very much for a lovely talk. I was surprised by a number of things, and one of them was your emphasis on practicing compassion as a route to being happier in your life. And I think a lot of us, I'll speak for myself, and wondering, since suffering is not enough, where is happiness happen? And I used to confuse it with pleasure, and that got me in a lot of trouble. But Aldous Huxley said one time, happiness is a byproduct of other things that we do. And I found that's really been my experience. And this morning in particular, someone sent me a link to a video on Huffington Post, of all places, was on generating happiness. And the point of it was that by practicing appreciation and compassion is how we become happy.
Practicing appreciation and compassion is how we become happy.
Yes.
Thank you. Wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And
I thought you were going to point to someone else. You.
Point to me. It's kind of spiritual spooky. I had to look at Roy and wink because before the break we were talking. Before we started, we were talking. This week, I'm a teacher and my volunteer quit, and she said the reason she quit was that at our school, she no longer looks forward to coming to our school. The teachers don't seem to have any joy. That they seem stressed out and distracted, and we had this long conversation about other schools and leadership and all those things, and she asked me on the spot, like, do you find joy? How do you find joy in your job, or do you find joy in your? I was talking to Roy about just the idea of where do you find joy? What is joy? I can have this sort of retrospective joy that I'm helping these kids because it's a really low, impoverished population, really intense family lives, PTSD, and struggling children and families. So, but on a daily basis, how do I remind myself to come back to that joy? So I love the question. It was weirdly, right on time for me. And I like what you just said. I wrote it down about practicing appreciation and compassion.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being a teacher. How old are the kids?
Kindergarten.
Oh, kindergarten, yeah.
And a lot of systemic oppression.
Absolutely. Yeah, my kid went through the Oakland public schools, K through 12, and I volunteered as a parent every year in those classrooms as a teacher's assistant, and then in high school I actually taught literature for 4 years for free. And the only 2 years I wasn't in those schools was in middle school when it was on lockdown and parents couldn't get in. Yeah, so thank you for your work. So important. And I hope you find ways to find joy. Yeah. Even if it's just watching cat videos on your phone.
I've heard that analogy or metaphor, we talked before about the turtle coming about 100 years.
Yeah.
And that leads me to think, okay, so that suggests that there's a technology that's given us this very rare opportunity to have a human life. Okay, fine. So I have a person has a human life. Let's say he lives a virtuous life and he's sympathetic and compassionate and so on. And then he dies. Well, what was is that the best we can do for him? Per his analogy, this incredibly rare opportunity to have a life. What do you do with the lessons we get if we actually do lead a virtuous life? Is this like some kind of like next step after that? Are we bringing in the question of karma and other lives and that kind of thing? I'm just curious to know. This is probably.
No, it's a very good question. Very good. Yeah, it is.
It's a good question or a stupid question, but it's just.
Those can be the same.
Those are good questions only stupid people will ask them.
So you're asking, is that kind of it?
Well, I'm just trying to say, if you present this cosmology of this very extremely rare opportunity,
very rare,
then it seems like there must be. What do you do with that 80 years or so? I mean, even to live it as virtuous as you can. Then what's the result of that, or what comes after that, or why would we give this opportunity for what greater purpose? I don't know whether that's.
It's a very good question. You don't have to backpedal at all. What's your name?
Clint.
Clint. So this would be my answer. There may be many answers. Have you studied the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so as you know, the Eightfold Noble Path is usually divided into that those 8 aspects, those 8 spokes of the Dharma chakra or Dharma wheel, are usually divided into 3 categories. And there's a category of, sometimes it's called mental development. So there we have concentration and mindfulness. There's the development of virtue, which we might also call shila or ethical conduct. And then, very importantly, there's a category which is the development of panya, prajna, or wisdom. And that has our right view or wise view and understanding in it. And so it would be considered that's why it's not like a path where you're just going in a linear way so much as it's conceptualized as a wheel with that, because everything's connected to everything else, and we're always cultivating things simultaneously. So, yes, we live a virtuous life, and we escort elderly people across the street and hope when we become elderly, someone escorts us. And, we're good people, and we separate the compost from the recycling, that kind of thing. And in that system of what the Buddha taught, as I understand it, that's all good stuff, and it just isn't enough. It is not enough for spiritual awakening, because we also need the mental, we need shila, samadhi, and prajna. We need to have mental development and that kind of cultivation, meditation and so forth. We need wisdom and what cultivates wisdom and insight into the nature of how things are. And we also need those virtuous actions. So it's a kind of a package deal. Yeah. Does that make sense? Not enough.
No. I mean, it's a good start. Maybe you and I can have a beer somewhere in a bar. If we really have a few hours to discuss this. It's a big question for me. I know it can't be answered in like a 2-minute response.
Well, you can contact me through the Contact Us feature of our website, eastbaymeditation.org. I'm the person who processes the webmail. And remind me of who you are, and I'll be very happy to dialogue with you, because it's a wonderful question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But you have to remember that suffering is not enough.
Okay.
I wanted to address what you were saying too about I'm not much of a fan of reincarnation or past lives or future lives particularly. Although given the chance, I want to come back as a dairy cow up in Marin. That much is full morning and night. I like that. But I think maybe the point of being here is that you add to the collective consciousness your contribution, and then you go away. You're dead. But
what part of that consciousness is that right off the body? Okay.
Well, actually, your good deeds through your life would add to the global consciousness. So that maybe is the point to me.
So, cow of the future.
Yes.
My original teacher, who was Korean and was fluent in English, said he did not like the word reincarnation at all because it indicates that there is like something to reincarnate. And he said he vastly preferred the word in English rebirth. And so rebirth, not reincarnation. And that would be my view as well. I have a friend who said that her I guess it was her mother, who was a first-generation immigrant from a country in Asia, Buddhist country in Asia, had an uncle. So it was her great uncle who had very long ears and a very sad face, and he died. And then about a month afterwards, they got this basset hound, and she would sometimes find her mother in the kitchen looking at this dog and saying, "Uncle, is that you?" So I mean, there can be stories like that, and people are like, "Is that you? What's happening?" And in kind of the broader scope of things, when we look at the idea not of reincarnation in that sense, but of rebirth, we can see that indeed life and death are part of cycles that are always ongoing. That are always ongoing, and part of the Bodhisattva vow, as I understand it, is to just kind of throw ourselves into it and feel that we are part of this this great movement. Actually, yeah.
Time for a quick one. Let's do that be quick. Pema Chodron talks about the difference between absolute bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta. And I'm very interested in that. And I'm also very interested in the Bodhisattva vow, which I've taken informally. I believe Pema says that we are mostly engaging in relative bodhicitta, which is to increase the compassion and wisdom. But from time to time, she mentions absolute bodhicitta. And when she does, my heart warms, and I have some sense that I agree with her, even though I don't know exactly what she means. It sounds almost transcendental, and I know that Buddhism is not theistic, but it's not averse to theism either. So, what is your opinion about absolute bodhicitta? Is
Very hardcore. Like, you may laugh, but very hardcore. Very hardcore.
When you say hardcore, you don't mean the opposite of lighthearted, right?
No.
Yeah.
It can be done lighthearted. Insofar as I understand what you're talking about, I actually chose not to read some of the passages from the famous Shantideva text because they're too freaking hardcore for most of us. And they're easily misinterpreted to just sound insane or, it's, most modern Americans are just not going to go for this stuff. However, it is in the tradition, and it is the way I myself was trained. So, here we go. Actually, right after I ended with reading verse 10 in chapter 3, right away, I cut it off. I thought, no, too hardcore. Verse 11, absolute bodhicitta. Without any sense of loss, I shall give up my body and enjoyments, as well as all my virtues of the 3 times, for the sake of benefiting all. By giving up all, sorrow is transcended, and my mind will realize the sorrowless state. It is best that I now give everything to all beings in the same way as I shall at death. Having given this body up for the pleasure of all living beings, By killing, abusing, and beating it, may they always do as they please. So that would refer to the many, many traditional stories of the evolution of the Bodhisattva, for instance, the Jataka tales, the previous lives of the Buddha. I think there are many in which the Buddha was, say, an animal who, maybe a mother who allowed herself to be killed and eaten for her cubs, for their lives to be saved, and just many drastic, violent, weird stories from our point of view of incredible sacrifice to benefit others. And that's very much a part of the tradition, to set that absolute standard, that bodhicitta in that sense means we withhold nothing. We withhold nothing. It's a radical, it's a totally radical act of exchanging self for other is another way that the Tibetan Buddhists talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Announcements. We have, I should read. Well, first of all, I'll say that Mushim, thank you very much, and she let us know that she has to leave right at the bell at noon. But as you mentioned, if you want to contact her through eastbaymeditation.org, you may. And also, I'll have flyers out front for some more classes where you can spend more time with her. Meditation and social justice, contemplative practices from 4 faith traditions, Buddhist 4 big truths, liberation and suffering, and going deeper in the Dharma, a group of committed practitioners. So these will be on the front desk by the Dhamma bowl. And speaking of Dana, Dana is our word for for generosity. And so our host, Philip, will have the Dhamma bowl out front, and please help us with expenses like the rent, newsletters, speakers, honorarium, Larkin Street dinners, our mailbox and website. There's a card out front that shows you what our monthly expenses are. Our suggested donation is $10. And next week's speaker will be Wade Meyer. He's the director of programs at the Rainbow Community Center, which serves the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community of Contra Costa County. With a background in women's studies and international studies, he obtained his Master of Divinity and Certificate in Sexuality and Religion in 2009 from Pacific School of Religion. His partner, Corey Nagamura, is the director of Endurance, a sports and psychology center. He is a psychologist and endurance sports coach who uses mindfulness practice in his work with clients, runners, triathletes, and families. That's for next week. Are there any other announcements? Our host.
Oh, I'm your host, Philip, and most of you know I'll be passing around the bowl, and there's hot water for tea, so please clean your cup afterward, and there's some snacks out there.
Hopefully lots of dairy.
Enough said.
Any other announcements for us?
A frequent speaker here at the Sangha is a gentleman by the name of Dale Borglum. He heads the Living Dying Project, and he's been part of the conscious dying movement in this country for the past almost 40 years. He, Ram Dass, and Stephen Levine began this movement many years ago, and he's a great speaker, very compelling. He'll be coming here, I believe, this spring, and he's giving a free talk this coming Friday at the Women's Building on 18th Street from 7 o'clock to 9 p.m. And so those of you who have perhaps heard him speak before might want to come, and see him there. And those who haven't, it's very satisfying. It's usually a very enriching talk that he does.
What's the talk going to be about?
The talk is called Conscious Living, Conscious Dying. And he just had 2 others. He speaks all over the Bay Area. So if you'd like to check him out, that's this coming Friday from 7 to 9, the Women's Building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.